Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello there and welcome. My name is Dave Cunningham. The Kingston Police Force was first formed back in 1841. The first chief constable was a man by the name of Samuel Shaw. 178 years later, his latest successor is a career officer with 33 years' experience. Here is our conversation with Chief ANTJE McNEEly. ANTJE, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
33 years on the Kingston Police Force, culminating in your appointment as chief last fall, so belated congratulations.
Thank you.
The first women appointed chief in the 178-year history of the force. Let's go back to the beginning and talk about your passion for policing and how it all got started.
Well, after high school, I went to university at Queen's, and I graduated from Queen's with a Bachelor of Science. And at that time, I went into research, so I worked with the university in research. And although it was very interesting, it wasn't quite what was fulfilling for me, knowing that I was going to do that for the rest of my life. So my husband and his brother at the time just had joined the OPP, and his joining the OPP interested me in terms of policing and got me a little bit more interested in what policing was all about. And really, that was my first introduction. And from there, I had applied to the Kingston Police and got hired in 1985.
And 33 years later, here you are in the big office. Prior to becoming chief, what was it about policing, or what is it about policing that you enjoy doing?
What really interested me was the fact that you're there to genuinely help people and to make a difference. And that seems what many people get into policing for. It's really a job that you can do many different things over an entire career. It's challenging, but really making a difference for victims is for me, the most satisfying.
One of the things I was interested in knowing is that a lot of kids, as they are growing up, say they want to be a police officer. And I'm wondering if you've had the conversation with any of the folks here as to how many of them started off way back when as a kid wanting to be a police officer and then became one.
And I think you'll find that there are quite a few people that had that early on. They knew that that's what they wanted to do, or they were in a family of policing, so they had that interest generated right from the very beginning. So I think you get a mixture of both.
Let's go back and talk a little bit about the history of this police force, and I would urge listeners to go to the website and read some of that history, because there is an awful lot there, and it's quite interesting to go through. The force officially got started back in 1841, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And your first predecessor was a fellow by the name of Samuel Shaw, who was the chief constable. Yeah. And what have you read about Mr. Shaw and the force back then?
Yeah, certainly there was Samuel Shaw, and I think there was 4 sub-constables at the time that were there as well. And really, policing back then was looking at watching out for fires and reporting the fires to the fire departments and ensuring that there was no illegal dumping of garbage into the market squares, and the roaming of wild pigs, I think, came in there as well at times. And there was a lot of dealing with the disorderly behavior, in terms of, I think we had a number of taverns there in relation to the population at the time, between 8,000 and 9,000 people. So I think there was a lot of disorderly conduct that had to be dealt with as well at that time. So we had a small amount of officers for a population of 8,000 to 9,000.
I read something interesting in that history, and there were 136 taverns back in 1841 in the city of Kingston, and a lot of them were back-to-back on the same street, is one of the points that I read, and again serving a population of 8,000 people. So this was around the time when there was a lot of, I guess it was around the time when there were military coming into town because of the nature of the city back then. It was Canada's first capital, and there were a lot of people coming in via boats, and so that would bring about some instances of disorderly conduct because of all the sailors coming ashore and enjoying the taverns and sampling as many of them as they could during the course of a day. Talk about the size of the force now. So if we go back to Chief Constable's day, we had 4 sub-constables serving 8,000 people. So what is it today? What are the numbers here?
So today we have 207 officers, and we have about 80 civilian members. So that's about 60 full-time, and the rest are made up of part-time civilian members. We have a population of about 125, which can swell another 30,000 approximately with students that are attending as well. So we're kept quite busy as well.
I would imagine so. When you've read through some of the history of the Kingston Police Force, is there anything that stands out that you found interesting?
Well, we are very much part of the city. I think the Kingston Police at the time, and still is, we're very much integrated within the municipality and within our community, and we work well together. And I think the partnerships have grown immensely since the very beginning, with community policing and the way our partnerships have developed. It's been quite amazing.
Now, when you talk about partnerships, you have to talk about the partnerships with other forces in the area as well. Some communities are served by the Ontario Provincial Police, and you have the RCMP here as well. How does that communication work? Do you meet on a regular basis, or is that something that just happens when you need to have it happen?
No, we've been proactive all along in terms of ensuring that we have good communications, not only with the police agencies around us, but also with our community partners, such as our interval houses and our sexual assault centers, and our partners such as youth diversions, and with respect to our community drug strategies and our universities and so forth. So we have a lot of partnerships. The communications with the policing comes in terms of, especially when we're trying to identify offenders, solve crimes. We really have not only face-to-face and verbal communications, but we have software communications that really link things together much more now than we ever had way back in the beginnings, where it wasn't that at all.
And I go back to just a few months to one of the incidents that happened in the city, where there must have been some extremely close communication when we were talking about that young fellow who was charged with terrorism. I think it was back in January.
Yes.
So that must have been a complicated scenario to deal with.
Yeah. And again, that was very much an RCMP-led investigation. And they let us know that early on that there was an investigation going. We didn't know a whole lot of the details because it was their investigation, but they kept us apprised as much as we should know about it. Mm-hmm. But very much so, once the arrests were made, it was very important to continue on from our perspective to work with our community partners to ensure that there's safety and feelings of safety, and that there weren't those feelings of mistrust within our community. We wanted to ensure that we all stood together and made sure that it was a behavioral issue. It wasn't against a certain part of the community. And so we did a lot of community outreach, and the RCMP were there with us in terms of that as well. So the whole outreach and standing together was a really important part of this.
And that's become a big part, I think, of your job and the job of the officers in this department, is reaching out to the community, communicating with them on a regular basis, just to keep things calm and help them understand what is actually going on.
Yeah, and it's no longer that the police are the only sole responsibility for community safety and well-being. It's really a holistic approach within your whole community. So we're all responsible together to work together, and therefore those strategies that we've had, like I talked about, the community drug strategies and the risk watch that we have, and the intersections and youth diversions and all those different partnerships, KFACT, violence against women. Those partnerships, we all work together to reduce crime, eliminate crime, obviously, to keep our community safe.
Okay. Chief, let's talk a little bit about some of the changes that you have seen in policing in your 33 years on the force. Anything in particular that jumps out?
Yeah. In the beginning, we were really developing partnerships. So we were at the cusp of where we had some tensions and relationships between our different community partners. So we were starting to develop those relationships, as I mentioned before, in terms of interval house, sexual assault center. We developed protocols to ensure that we could work together and when we were working with victims in a seamless fashion. And now, the complexity of policing has really grown. And I say that in terms of the different cyber crimes that are available, that are around right now. The fact that it's borderless, somebody from across the world can be hacking into your computer, or could be, doing some some illegal phone calls to the police saying that something's happening in this particular school, the swatting incidents, for example, that we had in late December. So crimes that just really revolve around the internet, social media, that spring up spontaneously. We've got lots of data that's coming in now in terms of video that we have to now have storage space for. So we have to have data to be able to store that and to be able to look through it and then provide evidence to the Crown attorneys for our cases. We really have that kind of a globalization has such an impact now on policing. What happens over in another community has really much an impact within our own communities, whether something occurs here or whether it's the fear of something occurring here based on what's happened overseas. So I think that complexity has changed immensely.
I never thought of the storage angle. It's not simply shelving to put books or reports on. It's also storage inside your computers and your servers.
Server storage. Now we're looking into iClouds, and we're looking at how can these silos not work in silos? How do you get at the different data and link it all together? So there's a lot to it.
Now, I was going to bring this topic up later, but since you introduced it, we might as well continue with it for a second. And this is the advent of the internet and social media, and you've already indicated that can be a problem. It does have a good side, I would think, as well.
It certainly does. It certainly helps in terms of solving crimes where you can push out the information that you need and it goes to a broader volume of persons than it would normally have done in the past. It's also about sending positive messages out there and combating the negativity that's going on. So it has a far-reaching effect for sure.
Now, does a force like yours have to have people on staff who are experts in social media, in the internet, that sort of thing?
We've been very fortunate that when we started in our media was, in terms of social media, was started with Steve Koopman, and he did a wonderful job in getting us into that whole realm and getting us introduced that way. And ever since he was there, he's moved on to different aspects of the job, and the new people that are coming in are obviously trained in that and are adept at that as well. So you really have to be in this day and age to be adept in those areas.
Exactly. Now, when you took over as chief, I would imagine that, like any other CEO, you're going to sit down with your team and establish some priorities that you want to address, having moved into the big chair. Now, give me an example of some of the things that you're sort of focused on going forward that you want to work on.
Mm-hmm. One of the most important things for me from an internal perspective is really looking at the wellness of our membership. And that has been always an important thing, but really the focus on wellness. So we've started a program back in 2012 looking at psychological health in the workplace. And we've had a lot of training in that area for all our members. And then we've moved on from there. We developed organically to get peer support programs. So we had members nominated to be peers, and there was training done with a psychologist and a wellness coordinator. And from there, we've hired actually a psychologist that comes on a weekly basis within our organization and is there for assistance to our members. It's taken some time. He's gone out on ride-alongs. He's made himself known to the different units in our area. So he's there for assistance in those matters. He's there for wellness check-ins. So when all our members are encouraged to have an annual wellness check-in with him. And in that terms, it's really looking at work-life balance, ensuring there's strategies in place for everybody, because it's not just work that's important here. It's what happens at home and what people bring to work and what work brings to home life. So, and how we're moving forward now is looking at organizational resilience now. So it's looking at partnering with Queen's University, Dr. Jana Raver, and now we're looking to see as what strategies can our members, and as an organization, what strategies could we put in place to make us more resilient? And in other words, when we face adversity, how can we overcome that and move ahead in a positive fashion? And that's not just at the individual level, but at the team level and at the organizational level. And that's really a 3 to 4 year project to see have some baseline measures of where we are now, introduce some strategies, and then measure to see the effectiveness, and then continue that on as we move ahead. So really what we're hoping in terms of this is that this really brings along a culture change for us. And the culture change is reducing stigma, accepting people as to who they are, being non-judgmental, being inclusive, and it's not just that we have one type of person that we're hiring. We're looking at diversity. We're looking at not just gender diversity, but cultural diversity, diversity of thought, bringing that all into our organization and having people feel safe in coming forward with their own ideas and bringing that forward. So really having a learning organization to complement innovation. And that can be done at any level. That's just not at the top level. So we're really encouraging that force-wide. So there's a lot of players involved here as to how we get there. But that whole changing of the culture from the mindset where, there's no room for showing emotions the way it was way back when, to now really looking after our members, that it's okay to ensure that we are seeking assistance when need be, but then also to move ahead and be inclusive, resilient organization to moving ahead in the future.
So I would imagine that part of that involves the process for recruiting.
Yeah.
And what kind of people you recruit now as opposed to what would have happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah. Looking for different skills, different mindsets. And like you say, one of the issues from a civilian's perspective, when there is a situation and the officers come on scene, they have to be cool, calm, collected, make sure everyone's safe, answer questions when they're posed to them, and try to get the information they need. So it requires a certain kind of personality, I would assume, when you are looking to find new people to join the force.
That's correct. There's a lot to it, and what we look for in new recruits is that diversity that they bring to the table, the life skills that they bring to the table, the different way of thinking that they bring to the table. But then also part of that recruitment process is a psychological evaluation that is part of it, and looking at resilience. So that's another piece of it, is looking at the resilience of a person. But then not only that, we have to be able to provide that support there as an employer as well as time are going on. So that's what we would do as well. So again, when you have such diversity, we want to make sure it's sustainable and that there's assistance all the way through.
When you're looking at diversity and deciding, we have to recruit some new people and we want to make sure, now do you make sure that the force reflects the population? How do you decide what kind of diversity you need to fill?
For sure, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to reflect what our community is the diversity of our community. So, part of that is the responsibility not only of our human resources, but every member of our organization. It's important that they're part of bringing people in and embracing the policing as a profession, and our diversity, and we have a diversity coordinator as well that does some outreach within the different areas in our community and encourages them for policing and does some training in that area. And we have Citizens Academy to educate the community about what we do. So an 8-week program just displaying all the different kinds of things that happen in policing to get that interest there. So that also happens. So it's really everybody's responsibility, but we have also dedicated areas that are a little bit more of that than others.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to you personally, when you leave the station, what sorts of things do you do in the community that would keep you busy when you're not working?
Well, some of the things that I do is I'm a board member on the John Howard Society, so I participate there. I also do volunteer work at Helen Henderson, so I really enjoy that, listening to the stories and hearing what people have to say, and just being there is really enlightening. Again, I have family time as well that I like to spend with my husband and the kids. Of course, they're grown up now, but we still get to visit many times during the year to get together.
When you talk about working with seniors and residents at Helen Henderson, those stories can be really interesting.
Oh, they certainly are. And, we had a lady there who was well over 100 years old, and to listen to some of the stories that she's had over the lifetime is quite exceptional.
You and I met at a diversity dinner that took place a few weeks ago, and it's the dinner that Jimmy Hassan puts on every year. And I was amazed at some of the stories that were told by people from different communities that came forward and talked about their personal experiences moving from wherever they came from to Canada, to Kingston specifically. And I would imagine that those types of stories and those types of individuals are some things that you have to incorporate into how you do your job too, is trying to empathize or identify with some of their experiences from elsewhere.
Absolutely. We work quite well with the Kingston Immigration Partnership. And again, our diversity officer is part of all that. And it's really understanding understanding the needs that they need from us, but also then reflecting, how policing is in Canada versus where they came from, so that we're dispelling the fears or some of the myths that they might have, so that we can relate better, that they have the trust in us, that they can come forward when something has happened, whether it's suspicious or criminal, so that they have the confidence that they know that something will be done, it'll be investigated. So those are all things that we're working together on.
Now, since you've been chief, and it hasn't been that long, favorite experience that you've had in the last few months?
Well, I have many good things have happened. I mean, I think just getting out and talking to the different organizations, getting to know me, getting to know them. I've had a number of talks that I've given. Again, it's good to get your story out there as to what the police do on a daily basis, and get to know who I am, and get to know a little bit about myself and how we're moving ahead within our organization. So those have been things that have been very positive. I've had, like I say, quite a few times that I've had the good fortune to speak out into the public to get to know us. So those have been good things. And I think the most recent really is with the adversity that's happening overseas and how it's impacting our own community, the strength that has come together within our community with the police, our interfaith groups, all our community standing together has been really so welcome, that we're standing together as a community and ensuring that those that feel not safe become to feel safe, and that we're standing with them. And I think that's been a really good thing to see within our community.
I think no matter what organization or group you belong to, I think the most important component of that is the ability to communicate and the desire to communicate to other people who may not know what you're doing. And that's what we've spent the last few minutes talking about.
Yeah, I think that is very important, because people see only what's happening to themselves on the daily lives. They may not see that what happens all over, in the grander scheme of things. And I think that's important to show how busy the officers are, how many 55,000, 911 calls potentially. We have 40,000 calls for service that we're doing. Our organization is a busy organization. It relies on our frontline staff. It relies on our communicators. It relies on our specialty units. It relies on all those that work in the courts. And I don't want to miss out anybody that's here, but it's a well-moving employment here, where we all work together to work towards that community safety and well-being, and there's a lot going on.
I think that if you live in a community like ours and you've lived here a long time, you tend to accept things as they are and not really pursue getting information about how things have changed or what the current situation is or how big the force is and the number of calls that do come in. And I think most people don't know that, and they're just assuming that everything is running the way it should be running. And obviously that's what you want to have happen as well, to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the job that you and your fellow members of the force are doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's great. I really appreciate the time you've given us today, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our guest in this episode, Chief ANTJE McNEELY of the Kingston Police Force. Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.